Thank you everybody for joining us. This is the Maps API Fireside chat. We have a bunch of people up here on the stage and a bunch more people down at the front here, all from the Maps API team. So between us, hopefully we can do our best to answer your questions. I will let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Sean.
All right, my name is Sean Askay. I'm a developer advocate on the Google Earth Outreach team, and I'm also the tech lead for KML.
I'm Peter Birch, the product manager for Google Earth product family, including desktop and mobile and also API. And I've also been involved in some of the Earth Engine work, so if people have some questions about that, you might be able to answer some of those as well.
Hello, I'm Susannah Raub. I am the tech lead for the JavaScript Maps API.
My name's Thor Mitchell. I'm the product manager for the Maps API and the Places API.
My name is James McGill. I'm the tech lead for the Maps Engine APIs and for KML on Google Maps.
My name is Mano Marks. I'm the lead developer advocate on the Google Maps developer relations team, heading up our outreach and efforts.
Okay, so we're hoping you all came along because you have plenty of questions to ask, or this could be a very short session.
By fireside chat, we mean you chat us. So.
We have a mic at the front and a mic at the back there, and I think we also, do we have a roaming mic? No, okay. So anybody want to volunteer to go first? Thank you.
Google Earth.
It's good. We want to get it on the video.
Hello.
So,
There it is. Google Earth API on mobile, being able to integrate like flyovers, things like that in our own apps.
Sorry, I didn't
Google Earth API, like being able to do flyovers, 3D stuff. So it's not just like Street View where it's just staggered images where it's more of a smooth flow. Google Earth has that on mobile, but it's not an open SDK or open API. Is there any way that we can access that in our own apps?
Sure. So there's a couple ways right now. So the question was about Google Earth API on mobile and what are some of the ways that developers could use, take advantage of this kind of full immersive 3D, if I'm paraphrasing that correctly. Yep. So first of all, today, there are some ways that developers can use that. So one is through KML. And anyone also has more KML questions, Sean is our KML expert here. We can talk more about the nuances of it. But it's a common markup language, and that is supported on mobile. And that's supported actually on Android and iOS. And so if you do have KML, there are some limitations, but you'll be able to load that onto the mobile device and then view that content. In addition, on Android, we take advantage of intents. And so there is if you use the view intent with a file type of KML or KMZ, it will automatically launch Earth. And for example, if it has a tour in it, it will automatically start playing the tour. So one really easy thing you could do today is if you have like a flyover that you wanted as part of your application, you could basically just have a link that would launch Earth and then start playing that flyover. Now, we often hear people saying, hey, I want to be able to do more than that. I want to have a full SDK. I want to be able to have full programmability over that. We don't have anything to talk about right now, unfortunately, but it is something that we hear more of, and love to hear more ideas and ways that people might want to use something like that.
So there's no way to integrate that inside the app instead of launching the external Google
Correct.
Earth
So
app?
right now there's no way of integrating it within your application.
Okay, thank you.
I have a very cool app that I have to deliver at the end of July, and I'm sort of wondering how many of these APIs are available for me to use today. What are the chances I could deliver that, number one, from a technical point of view, and then would there also be the necessary documentation and examples available to help me use these new APIs?
Which can you say specifically which APIs you're interested in?
Well, I have quite a few point and polygon layers in ArcView, in Arc, and I want to be able to upload those and then combine those with some other mapping data and ortho photos and things like that.
So today you can upload all of that to Maps Engine if you have a Maps Engine account, and then serve those out onto layers onto a Google Maps API application. That's all available right now.
Great. And what about in terms of examples and documentation?
we've got fewer of those. For the maps data layer is listed as experimental because it's that's our way of saying we're testing this particular piece out. But you can ask questions in our developer forums, specifically on Stack Overflow. We're answering questions there. Just tag it as Maps API v3, and then somebody will get to answer your questions soon. And also, I have a couple of samples in my slide deck, which I did for Maps Engine, and I'll publish that out to Twitter tonight, I guess. And then there's also a code lab tomorrow on Maps Engine where you can take a lot of that code with you.
So you would say the odds are pretty good that I should be able to count on those features and deliver.
Great. Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the Transit API. I have a project called Transit and Trails, and we've been waiting for that for a long time. It looks great. I looked at the docs. I was wondering about, is there a way to get service area boundaries for the agencies that you do have in the system, and a way to get a list programmatically of the agencies that do provide their data? Because certain areas, especially the Bay Area, has lots of agencies and not all of them are there. So if we can provide a way to our users to sort of disable certain features if they're looking in an area that doesn't have transit available, that would be great. Is there anything like that?
We did yesterday, in conjunction with the launch ad, update our FAQ, and there is a link in there that links to a list of all the transit agencies, I believe, that we include. And we don't have coverage polygons, I think is what you were asking for.
Yeah, we're currently maintaining our own sort of polygons for service area boundaries for the agencies we know about. But it'd be great if we could get that programmatically for all the other regions.
Yeah, I don't, that's certainly not something we currently provide. I don't believe we expose that on maps either, so I'm not sure that's something we have in the infrastructure at the moment.
Okay.
There is a sort of a manual process you could go through. We did introduce the transit layer, and if you were to take the transit layer and take, for example, our drawing tools, and then refer to the list of cities that we have, you could actually just sketch out the polygons yourself fairly easily. But it's a little bit of a manual process.
Yeah, cool.
I would also say file feature requests like this. The team that maintains all of this is not here, and so we would need to communicate back with Zurich and find out what's even possible on some of that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
I was wondering if there's any plans to support Windows 7 multi-touch in Earth in either the thick or the thin client?
Yeah, so that's something we definitely looked at, and we just haven't implemented it completely yet. But so you're talking about for touchpad, or you're talking about for touchscreen?
For larger touchscreens, like perceptive pixel devices, stuff along that nature. Basically anything that runs Windows 7 multi-touch support.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that obviously isn't there right now, but we are definitely looking into and would love to add.
Great.
So, cool. I mean, obviously, from our mobile devices, we've done a lot of work already in terms of a touch interface. So we'd really like to bring that to touchpads as well as touchscreens on other operating systems. All right, guys, don't be shy.
I've got lots more questions. In talking with my Google rep, he's not a very technical guy. He always talks about, maps and Earth, they're kind of merging together. On the web, looking at it from that perspective, what's the roadmap for that? And this is kind of a two-part question, so that's the first part. I'll let you guys go.
Excellent. That's one of my favorite questions. So obviously, maps and Earth have a lot of lineage together. In fact, if you go back in history, and when Keyhole was acquired, a lot of that technology is what brought satellite mode, for example, to Google Maps. Mm-hmm. And in 2008, I believe, we launched Earth View in Google Maps as well. So we're always working and trying to figure out how we can bring these different experiences to our users wherever they are, right? Now, there's going to be technology limitations. So, for example, in a browser, there's certain things that are easy to do and other things that are hard to do. Uh-huh. And so, for example, when we brought out the Earth API and the plugin, it's not because we love plugins, it's because that was the best technical solution that we had in order to bring that level of kind of rich, high frame rate interactive graphics to developers on the web. Now, obviously, as the web has moved forward and there's a lot of great new ideas and technologies, we have WebGL, browsers such as Chrome have gotten much faster, and so we're obviously very excited about some of the possibilities there. I think it's pretty fair to say that, we are one family, right? And we're trying to bring all of our services to our customers wherever they are. We're not done. So we absolutely want to bring a full immersive 3D experience to every device you are, and be able to bring that functionality across of our products.
Very cool. So is there an integration point that's, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you can start to see the beginnings of that with our MapsGL experiments, how we're doing some of the swooping effects and also the way the Street View panoramas work and a lot of other things within that, and taking advantage of WebGL. I think it's a really, I love it because I think it's a really interesting problem. Your next question is probably going to be when. I see that, yeah. And we were famous for not giving an answer to that question.
But there is a when.
We can't promise any upcoming features. But
let me jump in. Yeah. We don't have anything to announce at this time.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot my key phrase. We don't have anything to announce at this time. But yeah, it's definitely something you find very compelling and really interesting, and the host of new technologies, particularly vector rendering, which you're seeing now on Android devices and in Maps, it brings out just amazing possibilities. And we're seeing both us and people using our APIs leaping forward with experiments on these kind of technologies. So.
Yeah, the WebGL stuff's very, very interesting, and that leads into the second part of the question is, you kind of through the grapevine, want to have web technologies, mobile web stuff on mobile. As far as bringing that onto mobile using WebGL on Android, path forward on that.
So I have some thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, mobile throws an interesting kind of twist in everything, right? Because you obviously want something that's going to be great performance, and you want something that's going to be portable, and those things don't always necessarily go together. I think the best thing to say is that we're very excited about how to bring all of this technology to wherever users are, and I think we will try to figure out the best way to go about doing that. Today we provide a suite of native APIs for Android with our WebView APIs, and you also have the option of using the JavaScript v3 APIs, and we kind of have that full suite. And so we're excited about bringing all of this to mobile as well. Obviously, we announced yesterday the new version of Google Earth, and we actually launched it on mobile first, which is the first time we've ever done that. So obviously, mobile is very much on our minds, and we're always looking at ways of how we can bring that to our developers as well.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, John Coriat with US Naviguide. I have a lot of V2 pages, like 50,000 of them, running G-Ads Manager. And I was wondering, how does the V3 ads performance compare to the V2 ads performance in terms of revenue? Is it equal? Is it up, down, same ads? Can you give me some perspective on that?
Mike, would you like to answer that question?
And underlying it should be the similar performance. We're using the same. Oh, do you want me up? Denied.
Mike was trying to avoid this earlier.
Hi there. I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Mike Perro. I'm an engineering manager in Sydney working on geo stuff. GAds Manager, now the ad unit, the google.maps.ad unit.
Sorry. Good.
Thank you. Oh, that's much better.
I'm just getting a gesture from.
Did you all hear the intro? Yeah, okay. So short answer, should see similar performance. We're using the same underlying targeting mechanisms, basically looking at what users might be interested in when looking at this place. For those of you that haven't seen that, we use a form of ads targeting that says, using historical data in aggregate, what might users be interested in when looking at Orlando? Turns out they might be interested in Disney World, so we maybe show Disney World ads. We'll bias towards that, certainly. Similar underlying mechanism for V2 and V3.
I have to say the performance of the map ads has been, just phenomenal. The income from it is, why I'm here pretty much. But, so I'm a little leery about changing anything because it's just so good and it seems to just ever increase. So you think it's safe for me to go into the V3 water on that?
So one of the hats I wear, I look at ads for Google Maps. And in general, what we do on maps, like if there's a revenue question, one of the great things about ads in general is that you get really good data that you can track. And that allows us to do fine-grained experiments. So rather than definitively answering this for you, because I can't really, what I would suggest is try it out.
Yeah.
Run it on some percentage of traffic if you have the capability, or try it out for some days. You'll very quickly get the answer. You can try it on some of your sites. I know you're running a whole bunch, and I know you were actually a partner for us very early on.
Right.
So it's really exciting. The performance is varied across various types of sites. Try it out.
Okay, I guess I will.
And good luck.
Thank you.
Hi. Could you please tell us anything about your roadmap in adding special query capabilities to the API? More specifically, making a special query between own content and Google Maps?
So are you talking about in the JavaScript API, or are you talking about in Google Maps
Perhaps
engine?
with the engine, I don't know.
Okay.
We are making special analysis using our own data. We are using ArcGIS link library and ArcGIS server, making mashups.
Right.
Are you thinking on, for our case, for example, any other alternative in the future?
Right. So in Google Maps engine, we Dylan Lorimer announced yesterday that by the end of the year, we'll have basic create, read, update, and delete operations, which should include queries. We can't say when we'll have specific features, but obviously spatial queries make a huge amount of sense for Maps engine and would be a pretty natural fit for that. So yeah, I mean, again, I can't commit to specific features and when we get, by the end of the year, we should have your basic query and create, read, update, delete operations.
So for those not familiar with Maps Engine, this is our enterprise geospatial cloud product. So the idea is we make it very easy for you to take your data that you have uploaded into our cloud. We perform processing on that data, and by the end of the year, we're going to have APIs so that you can get back that data, run queries over it, access subsets of it. We've also got great integration with the Maps API, which has already launched. So we can render that data server-side as tiled overlays, which allows us to very efficiently show very large data sets on top of the Maps API. And then you can integrate that with all the other components of the API, so Street View, editable polygons. So that allows you to build really rich applications without having to worry about how you host that data and how you make it globally available and reliably available.
And we did a session earlier in Google I/O, which is recorded and should be published as a video within the next 24 hours, Enterprise Geospatial in Google's Cloud. Talks through it. Sean Madej and I did it. Sean did a demo of using Maps Engine. And then I showed some of the developer components that exist today and talked a little bit about the future. So.
And I believe there's a code lab tomorrow as well, which should go into some of those processes as well.
Right.
So
Sean,
that may be worth attending.
Sean Woltman and Mike Evanoff are running a code lab tomorrow where you get hands-on access to what we currently have available in the API.
Sorry.
Let's, yeah.
I'll get the first one. Just a question about the offline mapping. I know it was a big talk, it was a big feature. I don't think it was talked that much the past 2 days. What is the best solution? It would be the Google Earth portable, or would it be the Google Maps? What's the best solution for offline mapping? No connectivity, no internet.
A crack team of experts with us today.
I asked him to ask this question. So my name is Dylan Lorimer. I'm one of the product managers with all of these folks on the Geo team, and I'm specifically product manager for the Google Earth Portable, which you mentioned. So I think the question was, what's the best solution for offline kind of use of maps? It really depends on the situation. You know, I think you saw the announcement 2 or 3 weeks ago that we're enabling on Google Maps for mobile the ability to offline or cache content for use in disconnected environments, like when you go on holiday in Europe and you don't want to incur roaming charges. It's really targeted towards kind of the consumer use. Do you want to describe your use case a bit? Is it?
Well, us would be for disaster response teams. So we're kind of looking at like global, like our entire country. I was actually trying to get on my phone. It limits the extent of your actual, like the actual offline capabilities on my phone. So I can't actually get a whole country.
Cool. Okay. So you know so you mentioned the Google Earth Portable, and that's actually a solution that we launched about 1.5 years ago, and it hasn't seen a lot of fanfare, but it's actually had quite a lot of use for these types of scenarios, disaster response and humanitarian response types of events. What it lets you do is kind of for your own data, not Google's content, but the data that you provide. You can basically create these little caches, and they're really only restricted in sort of overall storage that you have. So they're not really little caches. They can be quite large, in fact. And they can be deployed on laptops or on mobile devices, and they can launch essentially Google Earth or a Google Maps-like front end, and you can have a complete mapping experience, you know, in the field with no connectivity required. They also can broadcast. So if you run this little cache on your laptop, we provide a server, and you can actually share the tile feed essentially for other users on your network to connect to from Google Earth or web-based mapping interfaces to consume the tiles.
What about mobile, Dylan?
Yeah. So the portable solution runs on laptops today. We're very interested in how we can do it on mobile as well. We don't have any big announcements around that right now, but you know, taking a step back for a minute, we're really promoting this idea of using Google's cloud to upload your data and to build maps with, but we know that in many cases you have to deploy those maps out into the field for those purposes. So we're certainly interested in how we can let you, you know, take that content out of Google's cloud and easily cache it, so to speak.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
If no one else asks a question, we're going to start singing.
I'm trying to avoid coming up. Sorry, I've got so many questions.
You don't want me to start singing.
Imagery with Street View. Any way to, along a given route or path, to get all available Street View images and points where all those are taken?
Not currently, although it is a question that comes up fairly regularly, so it's something that we have been known to discuss.
Great. And the 45-degree cool 3D building stuff. Unfortunately, I can't bring in Google Earth into stuff we're using. I'd love to. Any chance on bringing it into Maps?
Fight over it. We don't have anything to announce at this time.
All right, thanks.
But it sounds like a really cool idea.
I like that.
We'll take it under consideration.
Hi, Brandy First from Logitech. I'm looking at it from an enterprise perspective. We'd like to have indoor maps that are private to our company, not shared outside. And also the feature that was shown yesterday in the keynote of the Street View indoors seems really interesting. Any idea on how we would get something like that for our internal use?
So Maps Engine for the indoor maps is probably a good fit. You can so Maps Engine allows you to ACL your data so you can keep it private just within your organization. You can share it with other people in your org so that you can collaborate. And then you've got fine-grained ACL on how that data is distributed outside your organization. You could push some of it publicly if you wanted to build a floor plan that everybody had access to, or you can keep it locked down. And for example, if you use Map Data Layer in the Maps API today, you have the option of having users authenticate via OAuth 2 in order to view that map. And then that guarantees that only people you want to see it will be able to see it. So using that, plus the ability to store vector data and render those vectors on top of Google's existing base map, you should be able to build compelling floor plans which you're able to lock down.
You have to do a little bit of playing around for floors. Actually, if you take a look at the Google I/O app on your Android device, if you got that, we did something similar, although not using Maps Engine, but just using different floor plans and just having a little control that adds on the floors. You know, so you press 2 to get to the second floor, 3 for the third, etc. So that's all doable with the JavaScript API and Maps Engine right now. One thing we don't have, and I'm just mentioning this because it came up in the last session, is we don't have routing within Maps Engine, so we don't have a way to allow you to do routing over your own data, which would be a nice feature.
And then the second part
James
was
can build that tomorrow, I'm sure.
the second part was the street view, indoor views of the office layout itself.
The Maps API does allow you to build street view panoramas based on your own imagery. You do have to sort of stitch that panorama together yourself and tile it and host those tiles, but it provides the methods you need to define the orientation of the panorama, the links between the panoramas, and then put that into the familiar Street View interface. So we don't currently have a purpose-built hosting solution for that, although obviously you could host that imagery on App Engine or such like. But the capability is there in the Maps API to offer custom Street View panoramas, and we have seen a number of organizations use that to provide indoor imagery. And you can even connect, I mean, I realize you may not want to do this in an ACL environment, but on public sites you can, within the Maps API, you can connect that into the existing Street View graph, so you can move seamlessly from Google imagery into your own imagery.
So I actually wanted to ask about that same question. How do I get my business on indoor, not indoor mapping, but the indoor visualization that they showed in the I/O at the first keynote?
The Street View imagery?
Not Street View imagery, the indoor imagery.
Right. So, but sorry, the indoor photos or actually the floor plan maps?
Indoor photos. You may not be the team for that.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out. So if you grab me later.
Sorry, is the question how do you get your business into there?
Yes.
Yeah. It's currently, as far as I know, it's a U.S.-only program. No? Okay. Just expanded. Nabil will probably answer this question.
You should get a prize if you bring another Googler up on stage, I think.
Hey, Dylan got off the stage.
I'm not actually part of the team, but there's a website you can go to where you request for a photographer to come to your business. They'll take photos inside, and then they'll put it in. So it's a program that we run globally right now. Yeah.
It's called Business Photos, I think is the
Yeah, I think if you just search for like Maps, Google Maps indoor business photos or something like that, there'll be a link, and then you can just say, send a photographer to my place of business.
Okay, and to be
you end up
clear,
having to pay the photographer. I mean, it's not a free service.
I see. So it's not a few weeks ago.
Are you sure?
I thought
I don't.
I thought that was true. Okay.
So a few weeks ago, Google brought out the backpack. It was at a mapping event. They brought out the backpack, or somebody gets to walk through a building and take full panoramas.
So that's
I want that guy to come to my office and take pictures so I can get it out on the internet.
Yeah. So what we announced a couple weeks ago is something called Trekker, and that's really a continuation of the Street View. So basically, we started with like streets, and we can drive around, and we can take a lot of different imagery and provide the great Street View experience we had. But there's some places we couldn't drive, and so we created the trike, and that allowed us to go and gather that same imagery in places that were too narrow, were pedestrian walkways, and then there was ski slopes, and so we have a snowmobile. And we were able to get some great imagery, including, for example, the Vancouver Winter Olympics and things like that. It turns out there's still some other places that none of those vehicles will actually get us to. We managed to actually strap the trike onto a boat to get the Amazon. So we were able to kind of repurpose that, including, I think, on a rail car on the Swiss Alps. So we have some great imagery there. The Trekker is our latest foray into, how can we bring beautiful views of places to our users in places where we, all we can do is hike or cross-country ski or some other things. So that will be something where you'll start to see imagery showing up of, for example, Grand Canyon or other national parks and other places, but that's not something that is currently available for businesses or third parties.
Okay, so there's no real way for me to either submit those panoramas myself to appear on as part of Google. I realize, I think how you addressed this gentleman's question before is how I could add those images for my own use as a layer on top of the existing maps, but I think you understand my question.
Certainly the indoor photos program, business photos program, the photographers that go out have been trained to capture the imagery in a specific way we need with particular equipment. Extending that to be arbitrary user-supplied content would be, it would have a lot of overhead. We'd have to do a lot of review, and it could become quite frustrating if what you've done doesn't quite match our requirements, but looks good enough for you. So right now we only send out trained photographers.
Just one last thing on that.
Oh, go what I was going to say is there's nothing stopping you from creating your own Maps API application, putting it on your website, and using your own imagery within a Street View panorama there that's hosted for yourself.
Yeah, and there are also some user photo communities, including Panoramio, which is a Google service, and ones like 360 Cities, which have a fantastic collection of photos. And in fact, in Google Earth, I believe in Google Maps as well, we have a layer of 360 Cities panoramas. So there are, communities out there where you can actually, if you have, high quality photos, upload. Those can be seen by a large number of users.
And also, it's a lesser-known fact that the Panoramio layer in the V3 Maps API allows you to actually specify a specific user, Panoramio user, whose photos to show. So you can actually display a layer of photo thumbnails on your map, which you can click on, and it'll open up and give you larger versions, and then restrict that to only photos that you've taken.
Although Panoramio, to be fair, is not for indoor photography primarily. It's for panoramic landscape photography.
With the trike, do you have a program to collaborate with rail trail organizations?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
The trike, do you have a program to collaborate with rail trail organizations, bike trails?
Yeah, I think, so the question about Rails to Trails, and whether we're collaborating with them. We actually did collaborate with them in terms of getting that information into our biking directions, just as I know one partnership. I do not know if we're having any partnership in terms of getting imagery of those trails. So I imagine that's the type of thing that would be great for our users, but I don't know if we have any specific arrangement with them.
You can't announce a date then.
And by the way, I don't know how to get you to be a Street View driver. That's another question that comes up very often. I can't comment on that.
Okay. We're working with a couple of customers into police and intelligence services, and internet is not an option for them. They can, of course, use Google Earth Enterprise, but they would love to get it with your data. Is that a possibility? Not now, I know, but in the future.
I didn't actually hear the whole question. Did you get that, Dylan? You should hand out map stickers every time you bring.
Hey there, my name is Dylan Lorimer, and in addition to the portable, I also product manage Google Earth Enterprise. So I think the question was, is there a way to provide Google's content for use with Google Earth Enterprise? For the benefit of everyone, Google Earth Enterprise is an on-premise solution that Google provides that lets organizations build their own maps and their own Google Earths using the same technology we use at Google in our cloud, but provided for on-premise use. And we don't provide content. We basically give you tools for you to use your own content to build your own globes and maps. And it's amazing to see organizations that are actually building really purposeful maps specific to their use cases. To answer your question, no, we don't provide Google's content today. It's come up quite a lot. A lot of organizations are interested in in that, of course. I think it's something we'd like to consider, and with the announcement, a few weeks ago of being able to provide some of Google's content cached in mobile devices, that could open some opportunities, but we don't have anything to announce today, to use the term that I just heard from you. Yeah. Which organization are you from? Oh, okay, private one.
More questions?
Hi, I think I may have asked somebody about this at one of the talks earlier, but we had some developers recently that on their own time they were developing some pretty cool applications with maps and fusion tables, and we liked it. So when we went to commercialize it, we kind of ran into a brick wall because we can't use Google Apps for domains and put fusion tables in there. So I'm wondering, is that something that might be changed in the future, or do we need to look at Maps Engine for the way to commercialize that?
I think so. The question is about Maps Engine integration with apps for your domain.
Well, it's slightly different than that. I mean, I think there's a separate question about fusion tables, and I think that fusion tables is a great technology, and I think its application for mapping has gotten a lot of people excited. And I think what we're really trying to do is take a lot of that technology through Maps Engine to be able to bring that to our geo developers. And so as we bring in new capabilities and new features, Maps Engine is really the platform we're looking to bring that. Now, specifically in terms of Maps Engine and Google Apps for your domain, that's a Dylan question.
So the question's around Maps Engine running on corporate domains at Google, right? So all of our products at Google, when we're building them for the enterprise, they should just work on corporate domains, essentially. And Maps Engine is no exception. It's not included in the default Google Apps product suite, so you don't pay $50 and get Maps Engine enabled on your domain. We have a different pricing model, but we integrate very well with it. So all the administrative tools just work. All the users in your domain, you can provision, have access to Maps Engine. When you share and publish maps, those same users can get access to them. So it fits really well into the kind of the apps ecosystem. Okay. Yep.
A few weeks ago, I read something like Google Places would be subsumed in Google Plus. Yes? For example, what I understood is that the Google Places page of the owner would be a Google Plus profile. Something like that. Is that it, or nothing to do?
So, yes, a couple of weeks ago we launched Google Plus Local, which essentially is a new destination for the information we collect and offer around businesses and reviews, scores. It's a much more social experience. It's integrated with Google Plus. You can contribute your own reviews. You can see reviews that people in your circles have submitted, and as part of that, we are migrating from the old Google Place pages to have Google Plus Local pages instead. So as a result, yes, we will be migrating the existing Place. I'm not sure whether it's the account as much as just the public-facing Place pages into Google Plus.
For example, if we are using Google Places API, it would be different now?
No.
No, this is actually a point of confusion which we should have seen coming. There was some concern that when there were a lot of articles that said, Google Places is being replaced with Google Plus Local, that there was an assumption that the Google Places API would follow suit, and that's not the case at all. In fact, the Places API is something that we launched at I/O last year, if you are not familiar with it, and that we continue to develop at a pace, and we launched a whole wealth of new features just in the last couple of days, including access to reviews, the same reviews you see on Google Plus Local, access to paging, so you can get more results than you used to previously be able to get. Also, more advanced text search features, better for desktop and speech-based apps. And also, we're adding opening hours information to the Places API as well. So the Places API is healthily expanding its capabilities. And obviously with the move into the move of Google Places into Google Plus Local, that does raise some interesting possibilities for directions we can take the Places API in future to also be more social, and that's something that we're looking into.
Where do you get your street map and cadastral data? Do you get that from local agencies, or do you develop that yourself?
Sorry, street map?
Street map and cadastral data, property information.
Yeah, we source them from a wide variety of sources, and actually several of our sources have asked not to be identified so they don't get inundated with lots of information. But we have then moved and shifted to our ground truth project, which Brian McClendon mentioned, which we are then continually propagating our own data. So a lot of it is looking at satellite imagery and finding street maps from there. And plus we add in an additional edits from MapMaker. Now there are some countries where we haven't launched MapMaker or the Ground Truth project yet, and so we're still sourcing from a variety of licensed data from other sources. But we just this month announced 10 new countries that we moved to MapMaker. So we are very interested in getting data from the user community who is most interested in making sure that the maps are up to date.
The reason I asked had to do with how up to date the maps were, because if the cities or counties and things like that are providing the data to you, then I guess they.
Yeah, I mean it's basically a very large operation to constantly be sourcing new data, and also to be constantly looking at satellite imagery and making sure it's up to date and incorporating user edits.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, if you look at Google Maps 2005, right, we were very dependent on licensed data, and that created a lot of limitations for us in terms of quality, in terms of the ability to update it quickly, in terms of getting coverage in other countries. And so both the MapMaker project that we've talked about, as well as this Ground Truth or GT project that Brian mentioned, are hugely ambitious efforts that we've launched to really just up the quality of our maps and the coverage of our maps by taking it on ourselves. It's something that has been a major focus of our teams. And I don't know if you actually got a chance to see his talk at all, and he talked a little bit about the process by which we go through and actually get the data. We're combining it with publicly available sources, including using our own Street View data, where we can actually go in and look at the streets and use image recognition to look at street signs and all these things. There's a lot of science and engineering in there to be able to create the sort of the coverage and the quality of that map data.
And I'm particularly proud of the MapMaker project because there was a huge percentage of the population, I think it was actually over half the population of the Earth lived in places where there wasn't decent digital coverage at all. I mean, you could actually go to some countries and see a few major roads in like Hyderabad in 2008, and that would be it. And we've now richly mapped areas that had never really had that level of mapping, at least in a digital form before. So I'm really proud of that particular piece of it. So yeah.
It's an absolutely astounding project. I can't believe you guys are doing this. The second question that I had to do with metadata associated with the shapefiles and things like that. I noticed that there were keywords that you could associate with it, but we have a great deal more metadata that are associated with each of the sets of data, having to do with who collected it, under what standards it was collected, and things like that. Is there the opportunity to upload that information as well?
Are you talking about in Maps Engine?
We're going to bring Dylan up to talk about metadata for shapefiles, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about in Google Maps Engine? Is that what you, yeah.
Hey, my name is Dylan Lorimer, and I'm also the product manager for Maps Engine, so this is a great question. So the question's on metadata, and this is actually a really interesting topic, and I'm actually interested in your feedback here. So today when you upload shapefiles or CSVs or KMLs, we do our best to preserve the metadata. We let you also apply your own, so you can tag the data with arbitrary keywords. And we have some customers that use that mechanism to define their own kind of taxonomy essentially for the data. What we don't do a great job of though is taking your metadata and kind of trying to map it to well-known specs or standards. I know there are some out there, the FGDC and Inspire in Europe have put a lot of thought into this. We're really keen to figure out what the right story is there, and we really want your feedback. So my point is that we preserve your data, we let you apply your own tags, and we index that and make it searchable. We don't yet have a great story on kind of schema mapping and how to expose that in more useful ways.
So we would put our metadata in there as sort of keyword phrases that we ourselves wouldn't understand what the meaning were as opposed to some sort of standard?
Today, yeah. That's how you do it today, but we do preserve, if you were to upload sidecar files or associated files that have kind of an FGDC style schema, we'll preserve that today. We just don't yet parse it and make use of it in a good way. Really keen to do so. It's come up with numerous of our government customers specifically who want to be, to leverage standards and have better interoperability. So we're keen to help you out there.
The government of British Columbia is working on a project to try to create a single database for all of the mapping data that's collected. And all of this mapping data is so fragmented, it's what I call weak data. And once it's brought together, it will be very powerful. However, one of the concerns that people have is the quality of the data. And it's not like there's good quality or bad quality. There are varying levels of veracity that you can assign to any given data set. And so having standards to understand it and other metadata would be really important to make this data powerful.
How would you want to expose that through APIs as well? Like, I'm curious if there's a way you'd want to expose attributes for third parties or developers to query?
Well, the biggest problem is what you mentioned before, which is having a standard set of keywords that define specifically what the attributes mean. So, adopting a standard, which there are out there, would be the most important. And then in terms of the API, just something like a keyword value pair would probably be, or XML would probably be, a good way to structure it. But it's the standards that are, I think, really important.
And then when you query the metadata, do you want to be able to do like inequalities on it, or just keyword lookup? Like, do you want to say, like, are there greater than, less than type of operations?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. We'd need a full query capability.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Who's next?
Last question, I think. Static maps. When a static map is delivered, you get a drawn route on it. Really frustrating to try to find that map, that point. We've had to do some kind of hairy math, which you are much better at doing than us. It would be really cool to encode that route data on the PNG or something similar to that so that the route on the static map is delivered back. Any thoughts on that?
Sorry, so you're saying, how do you get the textual instructions that go with an image?
So we get an image that's a static map with a route on it. Knowing where that route is on the image in a per pixel, like where is the red line type of thing, it doesn't come back with the data. So we need to calculate that, and it's somewhat inaccurate on our side.
So there's two parts to this, actually. One is the service that provides the polylines that are drawn on a static map is the same service that drives the Directions API. And the Directions API does return a polyline as a vector for you. I realize that, however, if you're looking to pick out the individual pixels, that may not be what you need. But it does give you, the sequence of vertices on that polyline. What I have seen someone do, which I thought was pretty creative, was request two static maps. One is a normal static map, which has the map on and has the polyline on. The other is a static map where they've used style maps to turn the entire map white, and then specify that the polyline be rendered in black. So what you end up with is a bitmap that tells you where the polyline is on the static map.
Very cool, but if it's a very intricate map, it's hard to get turns and distances.
Right, in which case you need the Directions web service, because the Directions web service will give you the polyline, but it will also give you the distance, the time and distance along each step, and textual directions, and obviously you can take that polyline and you can use the geometry library that we have to calculate other things about that you might need as well.
But the static image that comes back, the bounding of it is different. And so knowing where 0, 0 is and where the line starts.
It sounds to me like you're going to need to use a combination of tools for what you're trying to do. And without knowing exactly the problem that you're trying, what your actual goal is, it's hard for us to necessarily engineer that
Is it a way to
solution
encode
here.
that data in the PNG?
It seems like this might be a good question on Stack Overflow, and then we can sort of dive into it a little bit more deeply,
Okay.
or one of us in the sandbox could talk to you about it more deeply offline.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So some of the new stylistic tools that you introduced in the Maps API, like the dash polylines and the symbols and some of that, is there any plans to port that to the Earth API and then furthermore into the KML spec itself?
Yay.
You hadn't had a question yet, so.
So sorry, could you repeat that? I'm not sure if I quite caught the first half of it.
So some of the new stuff that you introduced in the Maps API, like stylistically, like the dash polylines and the symbols and arrowheads, is there any plans on introducing that into KML and also into the Earth API?
Yeah, so we're definitely interested in adding richer styling features to KML. We're currently working with the Open Geospatial Consortium to revision KML, and there have been a lot of proposals from other groups to the standard to do just that, to add dotted lines, different types of highlighting and stuff. We don't have anything to announce yet, but it's definitely something that both Google and people outside of Google interested in the KML standard are very keen on working on, and it's a personal interest of mine. So nothing right now, but we're thinking about it.
Okay, second question. A lot of our end users complained specifically in Earth about the way disambiguation is handled, like i.e. you have 10 ships in a port, and it's very hard to see stacked up what's actually there. I was wondering if that's something that's been commented on, any plans to address it, et cetera.
So you're talking about the desktop client or the API?
Desktop client more specifically, but if it was something that was going to be improved in the API.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a hard problem to solve. I mean,
agreed.
And I think, there's some more flexibility in the API in terms of returning a list that might, if you have a hit, and you could get back a list of objects. In the desktop client, one of the challenges we have is that, the user is the one driving the experience, and they could have any number of different layers on that could have no correlation with each other, right? So you might have the photo layer on, you might have a couple of other layers from the gallery, and then you might have your own content. And if you click on a point, we need to let the user, the user give us more information about, which one they're looking at. We have we call it the turkey tail sort of disambiguation right now, which is not.
I call it the star.
The star.
Yeah,
sorry.
Starfish is what we call it.
Which is has some challenges, and I think we'd love to hear some more ideas about what would work better for you in terms of ways to make it easier for users to kind of, because we still do need information from the user, which is which of the various things that you've just intersected with is the one that you're most interested in. And we
Right.
don't want to get in the mode where we just show the top one, because that is going to hide some data.
Right, maybe.
I think, I think there's a lot that you can do server side. You could do a regionated KML network link hierarchy that would, at a higher level, aggregate into a single place mark with a list within the description balloon of all the ships in port or whatever you're doing. And as you get in closer, it spreads it out. Something along the similar lines, but for the Maps API, is our marker cluster utility library, which I don't know if you've taken a look at. And that might actually give some ideas in terms of algorithms that you could employ for clustering.
Right, definitely. Cool, thank you.
So I think we have time for one more question. And we want to grab it while it's on the table.
Yesterday they talked about the new canvas overlay layer, but I didn't see it in the docs yet. Is that coming soon, or did I just miss it and didn't look in the right place?
Brendan Kenny is about to release that into the utility library. I don't know that it's actually gone out yet, but
oh, it's in the utility library,
it's
not
going
the,
to,
not
yeah,
the Maps
it's
API
an open
docs.
source project, and I believe he said it will be part of the utility library.
Okay,
so,
I was just looking in the wrong place. Thank you.
No problem. I think we actually have time for one more quick question. Nobody.
I have a question.
Oh.
Thor, you talked about a lot of great API stuff yesterday. What's the new API that you're most excited about?
Susannah's
Choose one of your children.
Susannah's in my ear going, transit, transit, say transit. Oh, did you? Oh, I'm surprised. That's true. Okay, so I'm going to hedge my bets and say there are two things. One service that you may not have heard of unless you attended one of our sessions, I think it was earlier today, was we announced we are working on a new API for asset tracking, tailored to asset tracking companies, which essentially allows you to, we already have a large number of customers who use the Maps API in conjunction with their asset tracking business, and right now we don't have any tools particularly tailored to them. And asset tracking has some interesting challenges of its own because what you tend to find is that the amount of data that's generated on a day-to-day basis can be quite significant. And so we are building custom infrastructure to support collecting very, very, very high volumes of vehicle locations over time, and then make it easy for you to store, serve, render, analyze. And there's also some very interesting things we can do because we have access to the underlying map data to improve the quality of that data and provide interesting added value services on top. So that's a very exciting project, which I think you'll see evolve over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. The feature that we launched at this event that most excites me that's available right now is the symbols work that was just mentioned. If you haven't seen that, we posted to the blog on that yesterday with some examples. The interesting thing about symbols, and this is the feedback that I've had repeatedly all day, including from a senior VP at Google, is that you don't appreciate the potential and the value of this feature until you see it. It seems like such a simple idea, but when you see what you can do, it's extraordinary. So I would encourage you to take a look at the Geo Developer blog and have a look at the demos on there and start thinking about ways you can use that, because we think it will inspire an amazing wave of new, interesting Maps API applications and visualizations. There was a blog post yesterday which said something like, I think this feature will revolutionize online mapping. And we went, oh, that's very nice, thank you. Okay, and with that, the red light is telling me that we are out of time. So thank you all for coming along. And